They'll take salespeople on, give them a desk and a chair and say, go and bring me some business. Forget money for a moment. Take money out of the equation. If you had a completely blank check and we could do everything that you wanted, what is it? The standard desktop support type stuff that the vast majority are still doing is going to disappear. So if you say, I've got 15 opportunities, we'd like to close 10 of them, what can you do to sort it? I worked for a man who had a helicopter, an aeroplane, a yacht, a £250,000 motor car. What he didn't have was Fridays off.
So, Paul Lloyd from Cellarly, what a wonderful moment to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us, Paul. I'm going to dive straight into this. It's going to be, our first question is always misconception about you. So what is it people get wrong about you, Paul, when they first meet you?
I think because most of what I do is based in sales, they all think that I'm some sort of hard-nosed, hard-driven salesperson. And in reality, if I had have been younger, I wouldn't be working. So, I'm very much look to do the job. And my training prior to getting into sales was all around management, people management, leadership, and growing teams. And that's kind of where my strengths are. So I performed as a salesman because I had a job to do and I do the job. My driver was being respected for doing the job rather than earning hundreds of thousands of pounds. And then my objective in many respects was to get into a management position as quickly as possible. And that's kind of where I've been. So even now, everything I do revolves around the strategy and managing people and getting best from people to deliver numbers. So, we build a plan, we look at the products, we look at go-to-market, and all the things that sit around, in many respects, sit around the picking the phone up, making cold calls and winning business. And I haven't, apart from obviously latterly for myself, I haven't carried my own bag, as it were, for probably 25 years. I've managed sales teams of 4 people and 90 people over the course of the last 30 years. And that's where where my strengths are. And, I meet people and they shy away or they make some smart-ass comments about, salesman this and salesman that.
Yes, of course.
And
you get tired with a certain brush, don't you?
Well, yeah. It staggers me that these, all these small business people who are wanting more sales do nothing but criticise salespeople.
Well, it's a perpetual issue, isn't it? But I think your experience is definitely going to be vital here, because what we're talking about is generating more business from existing customers. And so much of that, although there is obviously a reluctance from certain MSPs who maybe haven't come from a sales background to embrace the whole actual sales piece, the transition, the moving towards a sort of managing what will ultimately be a team is really critical in us sort of trying to understand how to be successful here. So can we just maybe chat about some of the things that, with respect to generating business from existing customers, what do you see among some of the clients that you work with in terms of the mistakes that they're making? Is there any sort of real basics people should look out for?
No plan.
No plan,
fundamentally,
no
there
plan.
is no plan. So they've got. I've got a client. I attended I do his sales meeting every Monday, so I did it this morning. But they've got clients, and they're doing the bits that they're doing or that they've been asked for, but there is no plan to go to them and look at the white space areas and look at the areas where business can be developed. And I think increasingly they need the plan, and they need to be delivering technology, because the standard desktop support type stuff that the vast majority are still doing is going to disappear. So, they need the relationship with the client. They need to know what the client's objectives are and what their aims are, and then start to deliver to them what's needed to improve their business.
And what does a plan? What does a good plan look like for you? What would you say? Are there any sort of key fundamentals in there that you think people really must have as a?
Yeah, at the end of the day, you've got to have a certain amount of understanding of the client. But what you're looking at is, what business do we believe is possible from another customer? So let's for argument's sake. So I got some figures a while ago, that said a 50 seat company will spend £250,000 a year on IT.
Okay.
Right? So let's assume, just for the purposes of discussion, that that's still the same. So if I've got a 50 seat customer and they're spending 20 grand with me, then there's £230,000 going somewhere. So, if I look at that and then analyze the areas of the business that I want to do, even some of the areas of the business that I don't necessarily want to do, but in the context of completeness, I'm going to have to do, break that out and look at what that is. So if we don't do their telephone system, for argument's sake, then how much is a 50 seat telephone system worth to you? Add that in the plan. And then over the course of the 12-month period, you would, presupposing that it's coming up for renewal. So, obviously there's a bit of background needed here, but you can then go out to win their telephone system, and that would be 50K. And then it may be that on top of that, they've got some project work coming up, or they want some installations done. All these things, and just, simplistically build a spreadsheet with all these opportunities in it, and then go out and talk to them about them all, and start to have a sales process that you work through to win each of those opportunities in time. And then you build that up over all of your accounts. So I used to run 7 sales branches, each doing around about 10 million a year. And at the beginning of the year, we would always sit down with what we'd done. We'd look at the accounts that we had. We'd look at what we believe we could build those accounts out to over the course of a year.
Based on that monetary value again, that sort of that idea of, okay,
I suppose you start with the product or the solution as it should be these days, and look at that. Does that fit? And then work back to a number and then build that in. And the beauty of that then is that, again, if we stick with telephones, but if half your clients aren't having their telephone systems with you, and you've got 30 customers, so you've got 15 opportunities of selling a phone system, you can go to a phone system vendor and sit down with them and get their support to go out and win those 15 customers, because the vendors are crying out for help and support in the various areas to get their business done.
Is that how you would recommend it? So would you sort of approach this on almost like a per campaign basis? So you've sort of mapped out your white space, as it were. You've got this idea of, okay, there's a notional amount of value I can place on that customer. But then would you recommend actually saying, okay, let's look at what the best fit solution might be across the board, and then go out and sort of put together more of like a multi-touch campaign, or
there's a lot of context involved in this, I guess. And,
yes, definitely.
If you've got accounts being managed by account managers, then you build a plan. Most of the people that we're talking to here wouldn't have that size of account necessarily. So what we need to be doing is rolling it up. The vendors are there to help and support you do things. So, again, if you've got 15 clients with 30 seats each, and I don't know what, I'm just going to work that in my head then and show off, but what's that, five grand ish? So, you go to a telephone vendor or a systems vendor, or the one that you've got, and say, look, we've got this opportunity. Can we put a deal together? Can we do something? Can you help us? Can we put an event on? What kind of marketing funds, development funds have you got available? And then work that through, and then do the same with other solutions within the accounts. And some of them you'll have maybe 5 and nobody would be interested. Some of them you might have 30. You might have a service that you started this year that you haven't done with the accounts that you've had for the last 10 years. But I always reckon that in the first year, if you look, I've done turnarounds, and I'm not good in a startup scenario, but I've done turnarounds and I've done kind of building. And it takes 18 months to get everything sorted. But, once you've got that plan and you've got those things rolling through, then you've got a consistent growth. And you can isolate them. And if you do what you say you're going to do with the vendors, they'll queue up at your door because they've got so many people telling them absolute nonsense. So if you say, I've got 15 opportunities, we'd like to close 10 of them, what can you do to sort it? That's this much revenue. Then they'll be banging on your door. And it's putting that plan together so that everybody then knows what's expected. So if you've got salespeople, what's expected from them. They're going to win this product, this solution, that solution. We're going to introduce a new one. I mean, whatever it happens to be, but build an account plan and then roll those up. You're looking at all the time, you're looking at where that business is going to come from. 25-30% growth from existing clients.
That should be the aim. That's what
and that's not that dramatic. And I have obviously lots of conversations with people, and I say do this, and they go, oh, we don't need to do that, we've got all of our accounts covered. And I got one guy a couple of years ago, he stuck me out that every one of his accounts were covered and he didn't need to do it. And so he wasn't going to do his white space. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, I can't make these people do it. But a fortnight later, he rang me up and he said, I'd never believed what you said. He had 34 services. I mean, they were rolled up into packages.
Yes.
Typically, sort of basic services. And he had 40 accounts. And the 40 accounts had the first 4 of his services, every single one of them. And then the rest of it was just like an ocean of blanks cells.
I guess at this point, we probably should explain what the white space approach is. You and I both know because we've dealt with it a lot, but maybe you could explain what it's about.
I mean, fundamentally, it's about looking for the areas within an account that you aren't currently doing that you could. So the reason that we tend to refer to it as white space is that if you create a matrix of your services across the top and your accounts down the side, and then you literally color in the intersections of the services that they're getting from you. So if number 4 across the top is desktop support and account number 10 takes desktop support, then that's a black spot, and you just color it in simplistically. When you've done that with all of your accounts and all of your services, what you're left with is a lot of white space. I mean, you shouldn't be, because in an ideal world, you'd have got it all covered. But in reality, there's a lot of white space there where clients that are dealing with you are not taking those services from you. And that's an opportunity. And it's an opportunity because you're dealing with them anyway. And therefore, you've got airtime. You've got no like and trust. You've just got to be there showing them what you can do and putting those things forwards. And this is where you need the plan, because if you can roll up, again, we'll stick with phones because everybody knows what a phone is. But if you set that for your first quarter and you've got that opportunity, you can run a campaign. You've got people speaking to the clients all the time. You've got the vendor on board, and then you've got potentially a nice chunk of business at the end of the first quarter. And then, maybe you do a different one with the second quarter. And there will be an amount where you can't roll it up because it might be just a service that you haven't done with 3 or 4 clients. But be out there talking about it. Run executive briefings. Do all these things that are raising your profile with your account base so they understand what you do. Because in most cases, you'll have clients that are going to go out and buy their phone system next week because they don't know that you do it.
That happens so often, doesn't it? That's such a common problem. Where does this fit in? I know people will be listening to this thinking, okay, that sounds good. This is a slightly different approach to what I've heard in the past. How does this fit into the sort of QBR process, or call it strategic review, or whatever it is? Because there's a school of thought that you should go in and just listen to what the requirements are of a business. Do you try and marry the two things together, listen first, and then identify where to go with campaigns?
Yeah, I used to, and I mean, it was, when I carried a bag, when I was important.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I used to go and visit my clients once a year as the sales director. So I used to walk in their office, and typically it would be with the IT director. So we'd have this sort of, in my case, literally heavyweight meeting. And we'd sit down, and I had 2 things to say. The first one was, what can we be doing for you that we're not? And, and I'd just say, look, forget money for a moment. Take money out of the equation. If you had a completely blank check and we could do everything that you wanted, what is it that you would want to do that we're not doing at the moment that would make your life easier? So we'd have a conversation around that, and all sorts of things would come out of it because...
Well, give me some examples. I'm curious to know what kind of things would come out of a conversation like that, because often it's people don't know what they don't know.
Well, yeah, but it's from their perspective. So, there's no preconceived ideas. And in one case, they wanted all of the boxes delivering to their office, which was on the 6th floor, rather than left in reception. Now, we can do that, can't we? I can do that. And then some of it wanted, a lot of what we did was kit, but, with services, we had one client who we held their stock of sort of owned machines, and we upgraded them and delivered them upgraded. So if somebody wanted an upgrade, we wouldn't do it at their desk. We'd give them a new machine, which was one of their own. And that was a service that came out of it. They said, look, we've got these issues where we're constantly having to upgrade, and we need a solution that we're not upgrading at the desks. We don't want that. We don't want any of that. So you build a service around it. Now, in some cases, you just can't do it, obviously.
Yes.
And some cases you can do it, but it's going to cost them too much money. But what you've done is you've given them an opportunity to, sort of bounce out of what they're doing as a matter of course, and you've got something in the future that you might look at doing for everybody, and then the whole essence of it, then you get you've got the diminishing scale, and then what's on your wish list? So what's coming up? Because it's slightly different with the very small companies, but the smaller companies need more help, don't they? So you should be going to them and saying, have you thought of having voice over IP? Because BT is going to switch off their phone system they're not, but they pretend they're going to switch it off in whatever it is, 2 years' time.
So it's a mix, isn't it? It's a mix of listening and coming to the table with something.
And depending on the size of your client, you might want to do an exec briefing. So if they've got a board of directors that you can go in and you can talk to them about security is an obvious one, but not from if you don't have security, you're going to go out of business because somebody's going to rob you. Let's talk about what security is and what the issues are and actually help them. And then, it could be anything. AI is another one, isn't it? But not AI. What can it do? We could save you 25 hours in your accounts department by implementing, AI to do some of the legwork.
Yeah, definitely. That's a topic. If you're not talking about that, you definitely should be.
Well, but unfortunately, it's a bit like teenage sex at the moment, isn't it? Everybody's talking about it, but nobody's actually doing it.
It definitely feels like that. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter where you go. I spend inevitably quite a lot of time with MSPs, and I spend a lot of time looking at LinkedIn and all the other things that go around the market. And if you haven't got AI in the title of your product, then you're nowhere these days, are you?
Yeah, I don't go down the AI rabbit hole. But I want to bring you back to something. You talked about a term that I am very interested in, and that's the sales process. So you mentioned about the fact that people need to have a process as well as a plan. Can we get a bit tactical on what a good sales process should look like? If I'm not sure I've got one, if I was to talk to you, what would you recommend I should be doing in order to put that together?
I have a relatively simple process which I developed myself because I didn't want to pay lots and lots of license fees, I suppose.
Okay. Let's talk about that.
So I have a sort of a straightforward, I suppose in some respects it's an opportunity management, but I want to track every opportunity that comes into the company, however thin, right? So, and in a lot of cases it would go to marketing, but if somebody phones up and says they're looking at changing their laptops in January next year, and they need them installing in 15 different locations and configuring back and all this sort of thing, I'd hold that as a stage one opportunity. So it's not real necessarily, but I'm not going to lose it. And then I work that until it's got a budget and it's got an owner. So, good old fashioned bant in some respects, but it doesn't move forwards until it ticks the boxes for stage two. So, and then it becomes a solid lead.
And that's an outreach, is it? So that's coming. So that qualification, you do that later, or let's say it's an existing customer and they've got a particular opportunity.
If it's an existing customer. So I mean, the people that I did this sales meeting with this morning, what we've done with them is when they've done their white space, they've created an opportunity at stage one for all of the white space. So they've got a calendar of all of the white space at stage one, because it's an opportunity, but it's not. It's actually, I suppose, in some respects, got no substance, but it gives me something to work to.
It's not sales qualified as such yet at that point.
But it's not sales qualified at that stage at all. So then stage two is that, we have conversations, and if it's an existing client, then we're going to have conversations as to when they're looking to do it, or where we think they should do it, and what the budget is, who's involved, and who's responsible for it, so we know where we're at. And then we've got a meeting to qualify that. So, and these could take 6 months. The important thing for me is the close date, if you wish, or the project date. So, we're working towards that. So we're helping them get through the various stages. So we'll have an initial conversation. We'll then look at their requirements, make sure that now, in the case of existing clients, the chances are we wouldn't have suggested it if we couldn't do it. But, they may come to us with something that doesn't fit what we do. So we need to understand absolutely clearly what it is that we're talking about.
And why the close date so important? Why is that a key thing?
I tend to position it with the MSPs like a project. Mm-hmm. So with an end date, I've got something to work to. It might be September, it might be March next year, but I've got a date that we can work to, that we can actually, at each step of the way, reiterate the fact that we're looking at doing it on this particular date. So there's an element of accountability in it to manage them through.
And is that that contributes to like a pipeline review as well, does it? So you sort of know.
So when I do a pipeline review, so again, simplistically, I've got stage 3 and 4 is finding out what they want. 5 is going back with a proposition in terms of an outline, and then 6 comes down to pricing and negotiation. When I do a pipeline, stage 5 and 6 becomes my forecast, which is where the date is important, because if I was doing it now for September, I'm looking at opportunities that would close in September.
Are you tired of wasting time on basic proposal tools? Sales Builder goes beyond PDFs, automating your entire sales process to win more deals and boost profits. Do you want to have a look at how it works? First off, we provide you with the foundation of a nice, simple, centralized view of your company's contacts and all of the useful related data points, and that's automatically synchronized with your PSA. The most efficient MSPs are ruthless about only selling a standardized portfolio. Connect to your distributors for your hardware details and availability too, your PSA to pull in your managed services, and then clear out all of that noise and distraction of ad hoc products and services you've been selling over the years. Define a tight portfolio with service bundles, set your margins, specify standard up and cross-sell items, and make sure that everyone is doing the same thing right across the business. Once you're clear on exactly what you want to be selling, it's time to work out who you can sell it to. Our white space analysis module helps your sales teams get laser focused. Spot the upcoming contract renewals, anything you're underbilling, visualize the service gaps, and focus on the most profitable account growth opportunities. So you know what you're selling, you know who you're selling to, it's time to send a proposal. Get beautiful, error-free, standardized and interactive quotes sent out without all that copying and pasting from supplier portals, adjusting templates, editing product information, all that stuff that just hemorrhages time and profits. With drag and drop content blocks and templates, you can make sure your document really resonates with your customers' needs or even their vertical, but in a way that's fast to produce because it's standardized. Plus, of course, customers can edit quantities and options there on the fly. They can e-sign, and you can see all of this going on right from within Sales Builder. Start your free trial today and see how much you could be missing. We have got a great team of real people with lots of experience here, so let's chat and see how Sales Builder can help you take your MSP to that next level.
So I'm interested on that one then. So in terms of measuring the outcomes, if you do measure just like the outcome as in a closed sale, by the time that's dipped, it's too late to do anything about it, isn't it? So there's a role for the activity monitoring. How would you do that to make sure it's not too late by the time you recognise a problem? What would you measure?
Each level, each stage, I've got a series of questions, facts, information that you need. Yeah. So as I say, the way I position it with MSPs is look at it as a project, and within each stage of that project, we've got milestones. Well, each stage is a milestone with tasks in between. So if they can't tick the box, I mean, one of the boxes is, do you believe we can win this? Right? So they've got to say, yes, they do believe, or no, they don't believe. And then when I'm interrogating the pipeline, I'd go and say, well, what makes you think we can win that then? But it only moves forwards on the basis of them having achieved the sort of tick boxing in between. So when you get to stage 6, if you've done it properly and sort of rigorously, that's a piece of business that you're going to win. So you know by the number of deals that you've got at stage 6 whether or not you're going to do your numbers well in advance, and that's where your end date becomes important, isn't it? If your end date's in September for all of these opportunities, then it's quite easy to go, well, that stage 3 is never going to happen in September. Tell me why it isn't, or tell me why it is. So you can manage each stage tightly to a date.
Where does this go wrong, Paul? Give me some examples. Have you got any clients you work with? What's the number one problem that people have with adopting this? Because it all sounds very straightforward, sounds ideal. What's the hurdle, the biggest one?
It's doing it religiously and not taking sort of excuses or fluff. You know, each one of the questions is specific to the organisation, but they're binary, yes or no. There's no ifs, buts, or if, buts, and wherefores. It's just a straightforward binary yes or no. And if it's yes, and it doesn't look from my perspective, if I'm looking at that, going through it with somebody, and it doesn't sound right or look right, is to actually drill into it. The problem that most of the MSPs or the people without the sales background is they take too many excuses and they listen to what people are telling them instead of what they believe to be the case. So I can, because of the experience that I've had, I can generally cut through a lot of the crap because I've heard it all before. Whereas MSPs, the technical owners don't have that, and they don't necessarily want conflict. Now, salespeople by their very nature are going to bounce around the box trying to find a way out of it. But if you've got it and you make it work and you're pushing people back, then eventually, and it takes me, typically it's around 6 months to get it working properly.
Is it because of just the people element, getting the sort of the regularity, the routine? Is that the bit that takes the time to bed in?
Yeah, the first 2 months they think you're joking, and
it's another initiative that will pass.
Yeah, it'll be well, we've tried loads of things in the past, and when they haven't worked, they've just gone away. So we get over that, and then they'll sort of kick against it because they can't possibly do that because their customers don't want that type of arrangement. And then once you've got over that, and they realise that it actually works for them, then it starts to work, and it works quite well.
Where do founders struggle? Where do founders struggle? The technical-led founders that are so used to doing sales, and sometimes quite effectively, just by nature of the fact they know the company so well, they've got the passion to make up for any lack of maybe sort of sales acumen. Where do they struggle in your experience when they're trying to move to creating a small sales team?
The challenge that they have is that they know their business, their customers, and they know when they're out in front of a client they can say whatever they want. And if they want the business, they can make it sound like the client wants it without any issue. The one thing I tend to use a lot is credit terms. So if I was representing you and I go out to an existing client with a big project, and the guy says, well, we want to go ahead, but we want 60 days credit. I can't do that without asking permission, whereas the owner can. So the owner can actually tick all the boxes in any meeting because they're in charge. But what they don't do is they don't transfer the knowledge of all of the products and the services to the people that they're then asking to represent them.
And how do you go about doing that? There's so much, isn't there? There's so much. How do you recommend? Have you sort of seen this transition happen successfully?
It doesn't actually happen, unfortunately, that successfully that often. But I think that the key is having somebody, in many respects, running the sales element that's done it before. And that, that's obviously is easier to say than do. But I think where it's getting sort of black and white, no shades of grey into that process and managing the people. You wouldn't have a techie working on your help desk that you haven't given training and that you aren't managing on a daily basis. I mean, it just doesn't happen. But for some reason that I don't fully understand, they'll take salespeople on, give them a desk and a chair and say, go and bring me some business. And, without any guidance, without any structure, without telling them where to go, what their market is, what size of company, just go and do some business. And that's a problem because 99 times out of 100, it doesn't work.
Paul, listen, it's been awesome to talk to you and to get through the main section of our show, which is the questions. But we do have a few segments, so if you don't mind, I'd like to run these past you. This one is Pass the Pitchfork. Now, this one was from Jennifer Bleem, Sales Sherpa, and she was asking, there's a discrepancy in the reports you see. So people like Datto, whose reports they do like sort of state of the industry reports, that kind of thing. And they'll say that actually there's a big gap in the number of small businesses that actually need IT services. There's a huge demand there. And yet the MSP market as a whole isn't growing in line with that, not as quickly. Is there any reason that you can see there that perhaps would account for that mismatch?
They don't know how to sell.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
Well, I mean, I say that. I think the difficulty is that to sell managed services, to sell a service is a completely different process to transactional business. And, if you want somebody to give you, I tend to refer to it as the sort of the heart and soul of your business to somebody to look after. Now, if you wanted a heart surgeon for one of your children, you wouldn't go on Google and search for heart surgeons and look for somebody that was the cheapest to deal with your child's heart problem. So if you're within your business, that sort of heart and nervous system is what you're expecting an MSP to look after. So that's a relationship that's got to be built before you start. And I think all too often, and a lot of this comes from the States, is it's sort of commoditized and trying to sell a commoditized service transactionally. And I don't think it works. And coupled with the fact that obviously what they're not demonstrating enough of is what the value is to the prospect. There will always be a large percentage of small businesses that will not have support because they don't think they need it because they haven't had a problem. But in terms of going out and essentially winning new business, then again, you've got an education process. You've got to be there. You've got to be consistent. You've got to be doing things. And it's not always the one that necessarily generates you the most profit. And, again, you need a plan. So who do you want to deal with? Let's go out and win it.
Yeah.
There is no shortage of new business. There's just a dreadful shortage of people who can go and win new business.
Brilliant. I like that. So your question for our next guest, if you don't mind. that.
I think I'd like to know, what is it that's driving the MSP community to constantly looking at an exit rather than building a business? I work for a man who's built a £2.5 billion empire, never gave a second thought to an exit. And I've always considered, I suppose if you want the British way, that we build companies and have some sort of care within the company rather than being constantly driven towards an exit valuation.
Oh, that's a juicy one, isn't it? And that's going to be great for, I know who the next guest is, so I'm not going to announce it because just in case it changes, but that ties in wonderfully with who I think is going to be on the next episode. Very good. Okay, so we have a section I'm pretty sure you're going to like. This one's industry manure. So this is your chance to think about a piece of advice that you get from, could be another industry expert, just one thing that you think, I hear this all the time and it's utter nonsense. I don't like it, doesn't resonate.
Work on your business and not in your business.
Oh, okay, go on.
I don't understand. Again, I suppose it comes back to experiences and where you've been. But when it comes down to it, I don't see any of the large successful businesses that have been driven by a founder, where the founder sits at home expecting everybody else to do the work for them. And there's a tendency. I mean, it does get misinterpreted, which I suppose is more the issue.
There's definitely an interpretation thing there. Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah. So, this, at the end of it, you need a plan and you need a strategy as a business, and then you need to execute. What you don't need to be doing all of the time is reviewing the strategy. You need to be doing the execution. So, if you spent a week at the beginning of every year building out your plan and building out your strategy, then maybe you review it once a quarter. But this constant sort of getting out of your business to work on your business is just nonsense. You can't expect other people to do it for you. You've got to be there. You've got to be on top of it. And if you want to grow and if you want to become rich and successful, then you've got to work hard and drive the business in the direction that you want it to go.
That's really interesting.
I worked for a man who had a helicopter, an aeroplane, a yacht, a £250,000 motor car. What he didn't have was Fridays off. And, you could argue he didn't have work-life balance, but he had what he wanted. And if those are the sorts of things that you want, then you've got to put your shoulder to the wheel and make the necessary sacrifices to do it. If you don't, if you're happy with a 5-man band MSP that you can earn £100,000 a year and poodle along, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But you're not going to get big and successful without putting lots of work in.
What a great take.
Business.
Yeah, I like that. So you're questioning the balance essentially of, okay, so you can work on the business, but maybe some people take it that bit too far. So listen, Paul, that's brilliant. Can I ask you for a yell from the barn? This is your opportunity to let us know, where should people reach out to you and what's going on at the moment in your world, your business, that you'd like to let people know about?
Where I work with people or with the MSP community is at the point at which they're either wanting to grow and therefore they need to do something different, or maybe they just want to get their sales sorted early on. I mean, I do a workshop which I've done with people before they've started, so that they've sort of started with sales in the right frame.
Okay.
The big challenge is mindset. So you've got to have a mindset of numbers and growth if that's what you want to do. It's not. I understand that some people don't want to be seen to be pushy in all this business, but if you want your business to grow, then you've got to be, and that's with existing clients. You want to be developing your business. So anything around the sales management piece is where I sit. I'm increasingly speaking at conferences and the like, with that subject in mind. So if anybody's got any issue on the sales side of the business, then I'm always happy to have a quick chat, maybe point them in the right direction, or all things being equal, engage a bit more. In terms of finding me, then probably the best place is LinkedIn. I do have a website, but people tend to find LinkedIn more than my website. So my website's cellularly.co.uk. My email address is paul@cellularly.co.uk. I suppose my mission in life is to help people. So I'm not a typical sort of consultant that sticks you on the clock the first time I speak to you. If I can point you in the right direction with a simple answer, then I will do that just in an effort to help you get on. I can engage a lot more. I've got a couple of people at the moment where I'm, for all intents and purposes, their virtual sales director. So I'm kind of doing the strategy management and direction, but from the outside. And I've been around the industry for a long time, so know a lot of people and I've met as many crooks as I have nice people, in truth. Yeah, so in terms of finding me, it's relatively straightforward. For anybody who's interested, I am speaking at MSP Global in Barcelona in October, and I do have a code for people to get a free ticket. So if they want to get in touch with me, I've got a code for a free ticket for that exhibition, which should save you €400, I think it is.
Excellent. And Paul, you also run a sort of a community, don't you? You have a newsletter I know you put out regularly. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah. So every Wednesday I send out Wednesday winners, which is 5 lead gen tips essentially. So it's an email and it comes out at 2:00 every Wednesday, and it's got 5 tips for generating leads. They're all relatively straightforward, and of course lots of people know them anyway, but the beauty is that it arrives, it gives you something to think about, and generating leads should be the easiest thing in the world given the size of the market and the number of people within it. But we do seem to overcomplicate it, and we do have an awful lot of experts in the world who are more than happy to take tens of thousands of pounds off you for doing something which is relatively straightforward. So my Wednesday winners is there to give you a bit of a leg up and give you something else to think about.
I think that's great. And sometimes, a lot of this stuff that we hear, useful advice, regardless of what you're doing, chances are it wasn't original, but the fact that it's reminded on a regular basis or there's some accountability sewn into it suddenly makes it way more useful. Paul, as always, it's been a pleasure chatting to you. Thanks so much for taking your valuable time out to join us. Been a while in the making, but it's been a pleasure to have you on, and we'll look forward to seeing you very soon, hopefully.
Yeah, all right. I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
All right, all the best. Cheers, Paul.
Cheers. Thanks.
That is it for this episode of Harvest. If you found this useful, all the links we mentioned are in the show notes. And of course, if you enjoyed it, please do leave us a review and share it with a friend, or even better, someone else in the industry who you know would get value from it. Until next time, happy harvesting.